Hello.
Hello.
What an entrance.
I was trying to get things done before we get started, but here we are. Welcome to Smarten Up on the Lamb Network.
Oh, as you sniffle up there.
Well, when you work with kids that have colds, you have to... you have to have tissues close by at this time of the year. It is fall. The weather's changing. We're starting to gather indoors and we're sharing. So,
yes.
Welcome to Lamb Network. And this is Smarten Up. On Tuesday evenings, we talk anything parenting, education, and any way we can smarten up, I guess.
Yeah, that's the objective. And boy, we got a couple of things that we want to discuss today on one of the topics we want to discuss tonight, I think, does lend to the whole idea of advancing ourselves. But the other topic is just flat out dumb.
So everything we want to talk about today is the letter of the day is S. I'm doing Sesame Street kind of introduction
One
today.
Of these things is not like the other.
Well, yes, the two things that start with S today are not at all like one another.
They are not. It's funny. I was at a breakfast meeting last week with some folks, and we started talking about the two old guys in the balcony on the Muppet Show. This lady had mentioned it, and I said, "Oh, you mean Waldorf and Statler?"
Yes.
And she looked at me and she says, "I had no idea they had names."
Just a little tidbit about me. So the Muppet Show, I did one of those, like when I was in Teachers College, I had to do a project, trying to research on what happened the year you were born.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I'm going to give up my age now, but the year I was born, the Muppet Show started. And, when I was a young child, even though I grew up in communism, for some reason, we had the Muppet Show. And those two guys on the balcony were my favorite part of the show.
Well, of course they're your favorite.
I mean, growing up in communism, sarcasm was something that helped you survive. And so these guys were epitome of sarcasm. Are you going to show their picture now? Yeah. Darryl just can't help himself. We kind of look like,
Well,
you got to pick one before you share the screen here. Just the main one. Here we go.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Yeah. Oh, this is like a whole art dedicated to these two guys.
Oh, they got posters.
Oh, no. We do not endorse this website, but my husband may be buying a poster sometime soon.
Yes, look at that. Oh, my goodness.
Okay. All right. We may stop sharing. It's only 35. Anyway, we need to continue with our show.
Oh, you're no fun. Fine.
Okay. We will continue. So which of the two S's do we want to start with today?
Do you want the good news first or do you want the bad news?
It is almost like that. Do you want the good news or the bad news? Even though the one that's supposed to be good news. So let's start with that one.
Okay.
So discussion came up. I belong to a lot of homeschooling groups and parenting groups, mom groups, things like that, because I like to I like to keep on top of educational trends, but also parenting trends, what parents are concerned about, what do they want to know about. And so this week there was a big topic about a letter that a mom received from the school board where her child is attending. And on Facebook, she was asking, so should I allow my child to go through this program, or should I ask to be exempt from it? And it had to do with SEL, which in teacher terms means social emotional learning. And so there was a little bit of an explanation what social emotional learning is. And soon after that, I looked, because you have to always look, the government obviously implements new programs in attempt to be relevant, to keep up to date with what the parents, also the government wants to keep on top of what the parents want their children to learn about. And actually, if I could just find here social emotional learning. Okay, I need another window open here. Is that, where is the search? Okay. Because the government of Ontario, at least that's here in Ontario, Canada, that is implemented. So SEL Ontario. Government Ontario. So this is what I found. And this program actually was implemented in June of last year. So now schools are starting to adopt. So obviously teachers now have been trained and they're starting to adopt this. And so this mom was asking, so is this empowering my child, or is it making my child so dependent and on emotions that is going to actually not be a benefit to my child? And of course, as you would have on Facebook, a lot of people are saying, oh, don't trust the government, which we shouldn't blindly trust the government. But at the same time, we shouldn't always write off what they're doing, because there's been some research, obviously, that happens. So this,
even a broken clock is right twice a day.
True. Well, the thing is, though, okay, how do I put it? The thing is, when the government wants to implement programs, though there's always agenda, because the government now, like, this is what we've come to understand, they want to at least appear and sound proper and smart, and there's experts. Obviously, they consult experts, but then they take what the experts tell them and develop that into a program that is going to further the education they're trying to put into public schools. So there's a little bit of good news in here and a little bit of bad news, because this is part of mental health in Ontario schools program. And as we know, we've spoken about that in a lot of our past shows, that after COVID was a really big shock to our mental health. And a lot of people, because of all of a sudden life has changed so much, especially here in North America. I think all countries around the world struggle, but the countries where there was more freedom struggled more, and there's more PTSD really that people suffered from after COVID happened, and we weren't allowed to do things like travel, even get out of our houses, or well, we were, but only to certain places we could go. Playgrounds were closed. Kids couldn't even play outside because we couldn't share equipment. So the government here, of Ontario, is recognizing that there needs to be a program to address the mental health of students in the classroom. So if you search ontario.ca document social emotional learning skills. So that's something that, as a homeschooler, I've been reading about for quite some time now. But now it's being implemented because the need for that type of learning is being recognized. And you know what? It is there. But then we have to watch, how does the government implement, does it address the need for social emotional learning? So mental health is an essential component of overall health, and government. So given that 70% of mental health problem begins in childhood or adolescence, it is important to equip our young people with the knowledge and skills they need to support positive mental health throughout their lives. So this is a good statement. And the fact that, you know what, anybody who needs to seek mental help and some psychological therapy throughout their lives, they almost always, so they're saying 70%, I would say probably even more of the time, that any mental health issues have started in childhood. Sometimes could be something as innocent as, gosh, they're just going through an experience that nobody sees as traumatic, but because of children's imagination is so big, it becomes a big thing, right? And then it snowballs into adulthood, and now a child grows into adult who has some kind of wrong beliefs in certain area that they have had unusual experience in, or somewhat painful, hurtful experience in.
Mm-hmm.
So as of 2019-2020 school year, learning about mental health in Ontario schools will take place. So obviously during COVID, they've decided, and it's interesting, that's 2019-2020. So it's almost like they knew they need to start implementing a program like that.
Well, I mean, it's classical that what the government does is it comes up with a solution for a problem it created to begin with. I mean, this is known as the Hegelian dialectic. And Hegel was a socialist philosopher, I guess he was, and German, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And what he postulated is that the government, or the people who control things, want to get us to a place where we're not going to want to go on our own, because it's all about control. And so what he said is that you have thesis, you have antithesis. So what that means is that the government creates a problem. It's called a false flag event, and virtually every major act, happening over the past 100 and some odd years has been orchestrated by someone. It hasn't been accidental. It hasn't been just things occurring. There's a book that I have on my shelf. That's not a JPEG, by the way. It's an actual bookshelf.
It's a real library.
It is, because I've been accused. I'm just saying. So I have a book on my shelf. It's called The Brotherhood of Darkness. And what it talks about is that there was a cabal of people back at the turn of the 20th century, guys like Cecil Rhodes and many others who were high-level Freemasons, Illuminati, and all this other stuff. And what they do is they create plans for the world. I always remember that there's a book that I read many, many years ago, probably in my late teens, early 20s, and it was called Captains and Kings by Taylor Caldwell. And it's about an Irish immigrant who comes over in the early 19th century, makes good, he becomes an industrialist. And periodically, the new chapter of the book would start that you got a bunch of guys who are sitting around a table, and they would be planning what was going to happen in the world. Are we going to have a civil war over here? Are we going to have, depression over here? And they look at the world almost like a chessboard. And we're the pieces.
Absolutely.
And they're manipulating countries. Well, I mean, you see George Soros and how he shorted the pound, and that's how he made his fortune. But it's kind of the same idea. And so with this Hegelian dialectic, what it does is you have thesis, you have antithesis, and it arrives at synthesis. So they create the problem, and then the problem is so traumatic, i.e. COVID. And, all kinds of stuff is now starting to come out about where the origins of that are from. But it was the government who says, we've got to get the vaccine. We've got to get the vaccine. We've got to do lockdowns. And we got to.
Yeah. And you can't go anywhere until everybody's vaccinated. And you can't go to, do work and can't make money.
Even today in Brazil, who, by the way, overthrew the election like another country that we know of. And the communist puppet that is in power down there, Da Silva, has said that parents who do not have their kids vaccinated are not going to get welfare payments. In other words, if you don't give your kid a medical intervention that you may or may not agree with, you're not going to get money for food.
Well, it's not just in another country. I mean, what was it? Was it this summer or a few months ago? I was reading about how high school students here in Ontario were talking about the fact that, high school schedules have not quite gone back to the way they were pre-COVID. So they're still in high schools here, they're public schools, they're trying to create those cohorts so that the students have limited exposure to other students, despite the fact that the pandemic was declared over and no longer
like
a year ago by the World Health Organization. So there was a discussion. Now students were saying, okay, so a lot of us are vaccinated and the pandemic is over. How come our school schedule, the way our courses are scheduled throughout the semesters or the school year, is not back to normal? Because they were saying the way the schedule is going right now, it's you kind of do 1 week of certain subjects, then another week of others, and there's no continuum. And there's quadmesters, so you either the students have to do scheduling a lot. They have to learn a course that is normally should take a full year or half a year for
2 months.
the quarter of the year, which is so a quarter of 10 months is a couple of months.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the students are feeling stressed out. So that's another reason the government had to come up with a mental health program.
Yeah.
Just and see, all these things are tied in because you hear about this and that, and so our Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce in Ontario, came out and said, well, we still don't have 100% vaccination. And so therefore we cannot force people to vaccinate. So we are going to then have this precaution.
We're going to make it as difficult as possible for you to function until you do what we want you to do.
Yeah. So we're not going to force you to vaccinate, but then we're going to make it difficult so that it will be a compelling argument for you and for peer pressure to happen, right? So that again brings under question whether the freedom of choice and freedom of speech is really,
it's an illusion. And so you have
relevant. Yeah.
And so back to the Hegelian dialectic, you have the government creates the problem, and then the people panic and they run to the government for the solution. The government says, oh, well, look. And therefore, they come to what in the Hegelian dialectic is called synthesis, which is we go to where we don't want to, but because the government or the powers that be created the crisis and we ran to them for the solution, they end up providing the solution to get us to do what they want.
And we'll hold on to that thought, who we go to for the solutions as we wrap up the show, because I know we'll get back to that. So this
ties into our second subject.
The second S that we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
So this is what happens. It's just the government's recognized, and I think any caring parent can recognize that there's a need for mental health equipping that needs to happen with children. And so what it says, this program will take place through the newly enhanced elementary health and physical education curriculum across the curriculum, as well as in kindergarten, and as part of students' everyday experiences at school. So just like SOGI is going to be implemented in everything. And because SOGI is a program that a lot of parents don't agree with, now they're starting to become suspicious from this program. So the enhancing the health and physical education curriculum takes a comprehensive approach to learning about mental health, important new aspects, and the important new aspects include the development of social, emotional, and learning skills across the curriculum, knowledge and skills related to mental health, and more opportunities to understand connections between physical and mental health. So,
put it up on the screen.
Did you want to put it on the screen? I guess I am reading behind the scenes here, but maybe because I found that the parent who asked that question on Facebook, I'm actually surprised that they didn't go to look into that first in the Ontario Ministry of Education and what they say, how they present their program, because that person just received a letter from the school. Yeah, I think you need to make it bigger, but I need to go to the other screen because I can't read from the screen. Okay, that's better. Thank you. So I read through the part as where the curriculum will take place, why, how the health and physical education curriculum is going to improve, but I need to be able to scroll this. So is that just a shot of what I'm able to see?
There you
go. Okay. And so here's the key learning about mental health that students will do, understand the mental health is a part of overall health. And actually, I'm teaching that in our pot. Um, there's mental health, there's physical health, and emotional. So thoughts, feelings, and obviously your physical body needs to be healthy. Understand the relationship among their own thoughts, emotions, and actions. So that's exactly what they're doing. So that's not a bad teaching.
Nope.
Learn ways to care for their own mental health and to be resilient in the face of challenges. Recognize the signs and symptoms of stress and to common mental health problems. Know about sources of support and how and where to ask for help. Again, that's a very important part. And it's interesting because this contrasts what happens in universities where you have all these sensory rooms and things like that for, so we are going to teach kids to be tough because I guess a lot of university students and college students are not mentally tough. So might as well start teaching social emotional learning
we
early.
Created a whole new category for them.
So I guess
snowflakes.
But and it is the word of like the term of this I guess time is snowflakes. So what is social emotional learning? I think a lot of parents would like to know. It is identifying and managing emotions. So we are human beings, we have emotions. So they can express their feelings and understand the feelings of others. Coping with stress, so develop resilience, positive motivation, so build a sense of hope and the will to keep trying for their goals instead of giving up easily. Building relationships, support healthy relationships and respect diversity. Deepening this sense of self, building an understanding of their own identity and feel that they belong, thinking critically and creatively, support decision making and problem solving.
Yeah. The issue that I have with all of this is that
it sounds good, but there's a hidden issue.
But these are buzzwords because basically we are at a point in history where anything that those in control tell us is the exact opposite. The Ministry in 1984, George Orwell's book, The Ministry of Truth, was all about redefining truth.
Yeah.
And every single department of Big Brother did that. And so when they tell you if and I think I said this last week, that if there's a government name for a program, you can be rest assured it does the opposite.
Well, and in light of the fact that Soji is a predominant program in schools nowadays,
in everything.
I saw a lot of parental concerns. Well, if you're so focused on emotions, aren't we teaching our children for all of them to do is to focus on their emotions because there's this program that it has really good intention, but then we're taught that whatever you feel is what you are. So now we're implementing seemingly contradictory programs, because you can identify and manage emotions, but we're taught to follow our emotions and not to manage them, but to follow them. So that is going to cause confusion in children right there and there.
Absolutely. And, it reminds me of the Disney movie, the cartoon that came out, I guess about 7-8 years ago. It was Inside Out. And yes. It was all about the different emotions that were in this 11-year-old girl's brain. And there was a balance between them, and they had balls and stuff like that. And that
these were different memories and thoughts, and so it's a physical, because children are very concrete. So it was a good way to represent that.
Right. And it was very well presented. But knowing that it was Disney, that of course I'm looking for, okay, so what's the catch?
So what did you find?
And what I realized at the end is that the whole messaging is that the girl was completely controlled by her emotions.
Yeah, she wasn't controlling the emotions controlled her. So the way she acted was whatever emotion was predominant at that time.
So what happened is that when all of the emotions were in balance, and joy was the predominant emotion. So as long as joy was in charge of running her brain, everything was all right. Well, what happened is joy and sadness got lost. Okay. They ended up getting thrown to some other part of her brain, and it was anger, fear,
And disgust.
and disgust were the three remaining guys in the control room. And so, it's all about Joy coming back and bringing sadness with her, and then, but there was no balance. And what it showed us that she was a complete slave to her emotions.
Now, this SEL, social emotional learning program, is claiming that is helping children to identify and understand their feelings of themselves and others. The thing is, then, what do we do with that? And of course, it talks about coping with stress, developing resilience, being positive, hopeful, optimistic, which is not a bad thing.
But how do we do it? What are the techniques that they're using? I mean, identifying what you are. Well, if you identify as a furry, which seems to be a big thing going on in the schools nowadays, that you actually are an animal, you feel like an animal. So you're going to start developing coping mechanisms based
to
on
defend
that.
your furry identity. And but that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. This is a wonderful program. If it wasn't being introduced to schools in conjunction with other programs, where you are not in check of your emotions, but emotions really guide what you do and who you are. So I'm just already seeing that this particular program per se is not an issue on its own, but what else is being taught is going to cause confusion in students.
It's what's tied into it. And biblically, there is actually a very clear verse on how to deal with your emotions. The Bible has instruction. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, starting in verse 3, it tells us that our weapons of war are not fleshly, or they're not carnal, but divinely inspired for taking down strongholds. And then it says that we are coming against every lofty thought that is raised up against the knowledge of God, i.e., that I'm not what I was created to be. And we are bringing every thought captive under the obedience of Messiah, under the obedience of Yeshua. So what it's saying is that every time a thought goes into my head, I have to take that thought captive, and I have to line it up with what we know the truth to be. And irrespective of what we may be feeling at the time, I just got a phone call today from someone that I've known for a long, long time. And he is in the hospital again with what looks like another nervous breakdown. This has been a pattern in his life over the 20 years that I've known him. And one of the reasons is that he cannot take hold of his thoughts. His thoughts continue to capture him.
Yes.
Are you playing with the different?
I am playing. I'm trying to make sure that people see us and are able to read. I think this is okay right here.
Okay. But we are to take every thought captive and bring it under the obedience of Yeshua. We have to line it up with the truth. And if my thought, my feeling, my emotion, my belief doesn't line up with truth, then we have to say that it is not from God, it is from the devil, and we have to dismiss it.
So in other words, this program could potentially be confusing if there's a concrete belief system and set of beliefs that there is at the foundation of it. So I'm quickly going to go over what kids in different grades. I think this is up to grade 8 here. So it says including kindergarten, but there's no description of what the kids in kindergarten are going to be learning. Yes. So we are going to go quickly about, so they have one sentence about each grade. So grade 1, to learn about positive motivation, student practice showing willingness to try out new skills and keep practicing. So this is movement competence. Grade 2, to practice identifying and managing emotions. Student try taking a moment to breathe deeply and refocus if they're feeling anxious or upset before starting a physical activity. So that's part of active living of the curriculum. Grade 3, to build relationships, student working in small groups, practice welcoming everyone and being willing to be a partner with anyone in the group. Grade 4, as they learn about coping with stress, students explain how knowing about physical and emotional changes that come with puberty can help them handle those changes when they occur. So in grade 4, kids are about 9 years old. So at 9 years old, they're starting to discuss puberty. And I guess at that point, kids are starting to approach that age. In grade 5, to practice thinking critically and creatively, students make connections between being active, working towards personal fitness goals, and mental health. All right, grade 6, to deepen their sense of self, students think about how stereotypes affect how they feel about themselves and identify other factors, including acceptance by others that influence their sense of themselves. So now we're starting to get into a kind of sense of self, and in the old days, sense of self was, what's my heritage, who I am, like what is my what my strengths and weaknesses, and sense of self is being redefined nowadays by the mere introduction of the pronouns choices. But let's keep going. We have grade 7 here. As they learn about coping with stress, students explain how to access various sources of support, for example, school staff, family counseling, and medical professionals when dealing with mental health challenges or issues related to substance use. In that list, I would put family first and loved ones and people they trust. But notice how here school staff is being put as first. And you know what? I may be picking at this, but I'm wondering why. Grade 8, to practice identifying and managing emotions, students explain how social media can create feelings of stress and describe strategies such as connecting thoughts, feelings, and actions that can help maintain balance and perspective. So it all sounds good. Okay. And what they're saying here, this is all created for the purpose to create students. So I think we can stop sharing this, which is right there. And just chat with face-to-face right there. So that's not a bad program. As a matter of fact, I think at School Pods, I am slowly starting to implement that as part of the curriculum, as part of the skills that children need to have. But again, it really depends from what moral foundation you're teaching this program. And there are many questions in that, what I even just read just now to you, when it comes to building relationships and welcoming everyone. That is great. That has to be paired, though, with the understanding of how to recognize danger and or kids who are not good influence, because we can then we can teach children how to welcome everyone and to be friends with everyone. But then if they don't have defense mechanisms on recognizing what's a good friend, what's not a good friend, who should be welcomed and who we should be really weary of and watching out for. So it's a good initiative. I don't think it's balanced. I think it's a little idealistic, but that's what happens. And I just wanted to parallel this kind of program with when I was in Teachers College. I keep talking about, because that so over about 20 years ago, the big initiative that in the US started and was adopted here in Canada was No Child Left Behind. Which was a wonderful thought about how children with disabilities or some kind of limitations in learning could be incorporated in a regular classroom. And it was a good idea for children to be in a regular classroom with children of different abilities. The problem is, though, and anybody will tell you right now, in public schools, at least here in Ontario, I think across Canada, though, this is an issue, that now we have budget cuts on support staff. And so the classroom teacher is not able to address the needs of those children with special needs that are now incorporated in the regular classroom. So that in a way now affects the learning of the children who want to advance and who have abilities average or above average abilities. So it has become a big mess.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes an initiative is good, but then I would advise parents to, first of all, and this is what actually my response was to the parent asking about this program on social media. I said, ask the school to show you the curriculum, to show you the topics that are going to be discussed, to show you the type of activities that are going to be discussed, and they're going to be done. How are the children going to be engaged? What kind of exercises they're going to do, and most of all, who is going to be teaching? What are the beliefs and the standpoint of the people who are going to, who is the principal? Does the principal I guess respect and recognize your values as a family, or the teacher who's going to be teaching that? Are you, what you believe, is that considered? Because we also have heard recordings in classrooms after parents pull their kids out from the introduction of Pride Month. It was a whole month. It wasn't even a week anymore.
Right.
That teachers, when the kids returned back to school after the whole festivities were done, was introducing that month, the teachers were telling kids, no, your parents are wrong, and you should go tell them that they need to change. So parents really need to understand, when a program like this, social emotional learning program, is being taught in your school, is your school considering your family's values? Is your school respectful of those values, or are they thinking that they're wrong, and that they should be teaching your child something that goes against what you believe?
Well, and even, when it comes to the outline of what SEL is, building relationships, support healthy relationships, and respect diversity. Well, we know diversity is not a strength.
What diversity in schools in Canada now is being redefined, because when I was a newcomer to this country, diversity just means people from different nations being together.
Yeah. But now diversity is referring more to about sexual orientation and things like that. And we have to accept all. By the way, we're not going to accept you if you disagree with us. But also, we've come to realize that diversity is not a strength, because, since the Israel-Hamas war broke out, we have got an explosion of demonstrations all over the world of people rioting in favor of the terrorists. And we realize that we have tens of thousands of people who have terrorist sympathies that are now living in our countries. That diversity is not a benefit to us.
Well, at any point, and that's right. People who are supporting Hamas could say, well, this is our value, this is our opinion.
And it is our values, their values, rather.
Okay, and so it should be respected, because that is diversity. Well, no, when an organization is existing for the purpose to create terror
and murder,
then that diversity is not, this is not a diversity, this is now a harm. And it actually kind of goes with the whole acceptance. In grade 3, I think it was, they were saying that the kids are going to practice welcoming everyone and willing to partner up with anyone and so forth. That's fine, but where do we teach the kids who should not be welcome in our lives?
Listen,
because we should be able to defend our well-being, not at the expense of others, but just as a preventative measure. We are not to go on the offensive, but we can defend ourselves.
And this is the whole Israel war right now, that Israel was attacked on its own territory. Israel did not go into Gaza and commit atrocities. The Hamas came into Israel, into people who were undefended. And it wasn't only Hamas. It was regular Palestinian citizens that came across the border and committed a lot of the atrocities.
Well, we are listening to speculations, but it is possible.
No. They know for sure that it was not just it was not just Hamas.
But that's besides the point.
What I'm trying to say, though, is that I don't have to accept anybody who has values different than me.
And that's what I'm saying. So at this point, looking at that Israel conflict, so why are we not protesting against the people who did the attack first.
Yeah.
Why are we not why don't we have anti-Hamas protests, but we have anti-Israel protests who were just simply defending themselves? And you see, that's what happens though, because I have also heard from parents in schools where bullying is taking place. Now we are being taught to be compassionate with the bully, because the reason they're bullying, because they have some kind of difficulty in their life. They're acting out of, and so we should have compassion for the bully.
We should, after they get pummeled to the ground for attacking someone to begin with. Then we'll be compassionate.
But what about the well-being of the child who is being bullied? And so
even
the
teachers.
Teachers are being bullied, and this is a well-known fact. So if you're a teacher, you know what I'm talking about, because when I left the public school system, not long after that, I was mentioned in that article, the teachers were starting to leave the public school system, and that was 12 years ago I left. The public school system. And an article came up because it was starting to become an issue, how students were starting to take advantage of all these rights that they were given. And so they were purposefully getting teachers in trouble to just exercise their newfound
freedom,
power, or whatever they were given.
And that's why you left the school system.
And that's why I left. And many teachers left as well. Or they would have to go to stress leaves and so forth. So, bullying on teachers is real. So if adults feel bullied in schools, how do children feel in there? But that's something I keep saying over and over. But what I'm saying is, we need to start really questioning, okay, what I'm standing for, is it right? If it wasn't this side or that side, it was just a scenario with just a known character that I don't know, and this scenario happened. If I read a story about that character, would I be on this side or this side? What is the ultimate right thing to do? And speaking of what is the ultimate right thing to do, I think we need to move on to our next S.
Yeah. So
there's a flyer that is now circulating, in social media. Is that Fox News?
Yeah. Okay, so that is...
Did you want to maybe share the video that is
it's a news report, so no, I don't want to do that.
So you just want to share the poster. So here it is. This is the one.
Don't do
that. Okay.
All right, so... all right, here we go. Yeah, okay, so...
Many choices, so it's just quickly...
All right, there we go. And we're going to add After School Satan Club. So
you can actually put it now so it's bigger, so it's visible to our viewers. I was just earlier wanted them to kind of see us. And so if you go here, and if you go here, yeah, that's better. So they can see, well, maybe. All right. So another thing I saw in social media that is circulating is the announcement that there's After School Satan Club. And after I did a little bit of research, I found that the After School Satan Club is not something that is just starting up. There already is After School Satan Club in several places throughout the United States. And here's the poster that says, "Hey kids, let's have fun at After School Satan Club," sponsored by the Satanic Temple and Reason Alliance. The Satanic Temple is a non-theistic religion that views Satan. No, I'm just kind of pausing on that, just so for people to absorb the meaning behind what these words are saying. Yeah. So non-theistic religion that views Satan as a literary figure representing a metaphorical construct of rejecting tyranny and championing the human mind and spirit. After School Satan Club does not attempt to convert children to any religious ideology. Instead, the Satanic Temple supports children thinking for themselves. All after-school Satan clubs are based on activities centered around TST, 7 foundational tenets, and emphasizes a scientific, rational, non-superstitious worldview. Wow. So we're going to do science projects, community service projects, puzzles and games, nature activities, arts and crafts, and snacks. So this is a middle school. I don't know, where is this?
It's all over the United States. It doesn't matter where this one.
Okay, so this is one school, an example that is hosting this particular school.
It's in Pennsylvania.
This is a new one, but there are several that already exist in different. And you read an article. Why did they start this Satan after school club? You were reading about that. Is kind of an antidote to the Good News Club, was it?
Yeah, something like that. So we now have a non-theistic. So it started by the Satanic Temple, and the Satanic Temple is out of Massachusetts, I believe, and they are really trying to promote this idea that Satan isn't a bad guy, but it is a metaphor.
Well, he's a fictional character, first of all. So why don't we then call that independent thinker, like, I don't know, Martin Luther King Jr. A club?
So, but it is the whole idea of the rebellion against tyranny and freedom.
So if we just kind of analyze the text here, did you close it?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I wanted to go and analyze, because, again, just like the Ontario Ministry of Education document sounds really nice with some buzzwords, some things that people go, yeah, like I can stand behind this. And this is where critical analysis, and this is something, actually, I'm thankful that when I went to McMaster University in Ontario, Canada here, one of the courses they taught me was critical thinking course.
Yeah.
And we were analyzing scientific research and so forth, and finding where first of all, we were taught how logic goes, if A, then B, or so forth. But then looking if different things that are published follow that logic. Pure logic. That's all. So it's a non-theistic religion.
So meaning that there's no God.
So it's a belief with no God in it.
But a religion is a system of belief that has a higher power.
Yes. So there's one contradiction right there. And Satan is just a literary figure. Okay. But then what literature does Satan come from?
The Bible?
The Bible. The only place that Satan is mentioned is the Bible. So now your non-theistic religion and Satan's just now, they don't believe that the Bible is true, but it's just literature. But then Satan is only mentioned in a religious text. So there's so much contradiction as I'm reading this that I can't even. I need to move on. So representing a mythological construct of rejecting tyranny and championing the human mind and spirit. Now, who did Satan reject and rebel against? Whose tyranny did Satan reject?
The Creator, God.
God. Okay, so now we are representing God as a tyrant who needs to be rejected. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And so After School Satan Club does not attempt to convert children to any religious ideology. While you just called the God of the Christians and the Jews a tyrant who needs to be rejected, but you are not attempting to convince children of any particular ideology, religious ideology. You're only saying that two of the major religions in the world are worshiping a tyrant God. Okay, that's all you're saying, but not saying.
Yeah.
let's see, what else do we have in this poster? Yeah, the Satanic Temple supports children thinking for themselves. Well, so does God. God has given people free will. If God did not give people free will, then everybody would be going to heaven and rejecting Satan. Okay, just so you know, if God forced believe in Him, then everybody would be believing in God. Then we wouldn't have to even have these discussions.
And C.S. Lewis, who was an atheist when he was a teacher at Oxford, and he came to faith in Yeshua, and he said one of the greatest trick that the devil ever played on mankind is convincing him that he didn't exist.
Yeah. Well, so Satan doesn't really exist, which the Christians actually think he's real. So they're actually minimizing the existence of Satan. They're, denying it. But I don't think they are really denying, because why are we looking at Satan as a hero? Why aren't we looking at, I don't know, Superman? Why don't we call it the Superman Club?
Yeah. And, it's interesting that Saul Alinsky, who was both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's mentor, he was a 1960s community organizer, which is what Obama became. And he wrote the book Rules for Radicals. And in that book, he gives, in essence, a shout out to Lucifer, who was the original rebel.
And so we are starting to get close to the end of our time. So I just wanted to go to the verbal expression of what this club is all about. Further, what happens here. So activities centered around the TST, the Satanic Temple's 7 fundamental tenets. We should look at what those are and emphasize a scientific, rational, non-superstitious worldview. So here's what we're saying: that anybody who follows the God of the Bible is irrational, it's non-scientific, and is superstitious. I am sorry, but for an organization, for a, I guess for a club that is trying to present a very neutral and objective point of view, it is failing to represent that in their poster. I don't even. So the 7. Okay, so Darryl just did his little. Oh gosh, don't even go there. So the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple.
So one should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions, including God's, by the way. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. That's kind of interesting, because there was a satanic gathering and you had to be vaccinated to get in.
Okay, so I mean, contradictions all over the place, but let's keep reading.
The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. Okay, well, I want to preach Yeshua. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. Belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs.
Oh, well, Fauci now can't. Anyway.
People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. Hamas. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written word or spoken word. I have to get this off of my computer before it...
Close it baphore any more Baphomets come and pop up on our screen.
And you know what?
Ugliness.
And what Yeshua says about Satan is that Satan, Hasatan, is the prosecuting attorney.
Yes.
That's what he is. And so actually in Israel, there is an office for Hasatan, the prosecuting attorney, in court cases. But what Yeshua says about him is he's the father of lies. Well, and this is now being promoted in school.
And without God, he would not exist, because he was created by God. So it's just a minor little details, because if you're going to address the literature where that fictional character came from, it says that he was created by God. So anyway, so parents, where do you think your kids should go? And, and see, this shows how much parents, just like in the previous discussion of this program about social emotional learning, parents need to now, especially more than ever, exercise critical thinking,
Yes.
ask questions, be involved, ask about evidence of what is being taught. All these buzzwords are wonderful in Ontario government document, but what does it look like in the classroom? What is my child actually seeing, hearing? What is my child being asked to do? What is my child being asked to believe? Who is teaching my child? What are their beliefs? How are they remaining neutral? How are they respecting my values? These are all questions.
So,
and if parents find that they cannot trust, if they have to ask Facebook, what do I do with this program? Then it's probably time for you to find people or a group that you can trust and you share values
pull
with.
your kids out of school, because this is what's going on.
All right.
We've arrived at the end of another program, and the Alive in Messiah conference with Rabbi David and Juanita Weiss is going to be starting in a couple of minutes. We invite you to continue watching along with that. And on that note, we just want to thank everybody for joining us, and keep pursuing truth, and make sure you look after your kids. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.